Welcome to Out of My Mouth, the program where raw thoughts meet unfiltered conversations.
Join us as we dive into the depths of human experience, where we share stories, perspectives, and insights that just might challenge the status quo.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and ponder the world around you like never before. This is Out of My Mouth.
The views and opinions of our guest and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of New Thought Media Network, or any organization we may be affiliated with. Here at New Thought Media Network, we welcome freedom of speech and courageous conversations. There are many topics that can be difficult to navigate. Challenging the status quo and engaging in lively debate is important to expanding our understanding of one another, and life in general. Creating a peaceful world doesn't happen because no one disagrees, it happens from a willingness to understanding one another. In our programming, we strive to expand consciousness and assist people in creating remarkable lives. Your comments are welcome at info@ntmedia.org.
Good afternoon and welcome to Out of My Mouth. I'm Barbara Jean.
And I'm Cheryl Rogers.
And I'm Nadene Rogers, and we're not related.
We're not. I have the slight distinction in my name of a D.
You do. You do. You won up to me, Cheryl.
Oh, you know what? I definitely don't think so, Dr. Nadene. After having a conversation with you just for a couple of minutes, my goodness, what a wonderful, powerful presence you are. And I'm so glad to be able to meet you and have you as our guest on today's show. So before we begin, I will just like us to, wherever you are in the world, whatever land you are coming to us from, let's acknowledge it by saying that in the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of these lands for thousands of years. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new. We are one. Miigwech. And now I would like to invite Dr. Nadene to call on the four corners for us.
To the east. Siam. Om. Nama. Shiva. To the south. Hey ya hey ya hey ya hey. Hey ya hey ya hey ya hey. Hey ya ya hey. Hey ya ya hey. Hey ya hey ya ya hey ya hey. Oh. And to the west. Siya Hambai. Siya Hambai. Tutapulai. And to the north. Shalom. Shalom. Let there be peace. Let there be peace.
Thank you, Nadine. Well, Reverend Dr. Nadine Rogers is a veteran speaker, workshop facilitator for the past 30 years, and is inspired by the belief that humanity knows that every individual has within them all the need to manifest a life of joy and peace and fulfillment and meaning. As past founding director of Calgary's former Joy of Life Centre for Spiritual Living and former staff minister, she brings years of brilliance. And I am so grateful, Reverend Nadine, that you are here on the show with us today. Welcome, welcome. And thank you for that calling in of the 4 directions. That
Beautiful.
It was beautiful, really beautiful. So today we're going to talk about the power of connection. And one of the things that we thought about, it's coming into the holiday season, and people, well, I think sometimes people are a little bit nicer at this time of year, although sometimes they're a little more rushed and hurried and maybe frustrated and annoyed when they can't get everything done right. So I'm not sure where we want to begin, but let's try that.
If I could jump in, and I was thinking about this topic, of course, just for a few minutes before the show. No, I've been chewing on it for a while. And you remember the good old days when Neil Donald Walsh, the author of Conversations with God, first became a world phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I remember, I love that first book. I remember he said something to this effect, and I do paraphrase. We don't need each other, but we need each other.
Yes.
And so when I think about the topic of the power of connection, it reminds me, we're talking about connection to others, but we're also really speaking of connecting to ourselves as divine humans, because everything moves out from in here. Right. So I think if we can maybe explore, for me, I'd be really interested to look at the connection from terms of inside out, because all of us, we teach and we live in the spiritual way, and we're very interested in metaphysics and wholeness and holistic living. And at this time of year, we are so focused on the outside and the busyness, and we forget about the internal need that each one of us has to be close to our own home, so we don't feel homeless. And then again, out there are so many more homeless, temporarily homeless folks. And how do we connect with them? Through connecting with that place and make sure we're filled inside so that we're not empty. So I think that's, kind of what I was thinking about today.
Yeah, I love that. Because, we can't give what we don't have. And so looking after ourselves, finding love and respect for ourselves. And that means listening to our inner conversations. And this time of year, I think sometimes people can become a little bit perfectionist. And so, again, it's all focused outward rather than being focused in that place of, am I okay with me? Do I feel at home in my body, in my skin, in my experience? For me, I think the work is, around meditation and taking a little bit of time in the silence before I get into the busyness, so I can bring my best self forward.
Yeah, because I think at this time of the year, there's a lot of doing, and we forget that. We forget to be still and to just be for a moment, right? And that go energy can be quite depleting and quite disconnecting in a way, because we really are so focused on out there and what's coming up instead of having the awareness of where I am right now.
And I think we all have something humanly in common about resisting going in,
Mm.
being still, being quiet. Don't we now, ladies?
Yes.
I'm going to be 71, and I'm like, oh, yes, I remember. Yes, I remember. Yes. You know what it is? It's being really intimate with self,
Mm-hmm.
with the truth of who we are. But what is our truth? The truth is the truth that what we believe and our identity, our ego believes this is the truth of me, or are we speaking of divine truth as wholeness, sacred, and
Yeah.
perfectness the way we are, and enoughness? So it's sometimes really hard to stop the busy mind and
Mm-hmm.
break into, increasingly hard because of the season and the commitments, and break in past the veil into the stillness, because sometimes we're afraid of what we're going to find.
Mm.
And
Yes.
often it's, maybe we could label it in part emptiness, loneliness, or even grief at this
Mm-hmm.
time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And that somehow we're not enough the way we are, that there's parts of us that are bad or wrong, but there are no bad and wrong parts. All the parts are actually necessary for us to live from our wholeness, to live from that divinity. We have to be accepting of all of us. It's a little like the yin yang symbol that is black and white and togetherness. And until we accept what we have judged as darkness, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe any of it truly is, until we accept that, we haven't done that deep inner work. But we can feel it when we do it. Like I could feel it with Cheryl, your opening, the way you did the land acknowledgement, and then, of course, going into the 4 directions. That took me into a really deep place. And, of course, the song that you sung before the show started really took me there as well. So there's lots of ways of sort of going in and connecting and realizing our enoughness.
Mm-hmm.
I am enough, you are enough.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think as you're talking, Barbara, I'm thinking about how, being still doesn't mean being alone. It doesn't mean being separate. And I think sometimes it feels that way. And I think about even, being an immigrant, how sometimes one can feel homeless even in our own homes, right? Because we think about back home, even though we are home right here and right now. But
Right.
there's that connection and those memories, and just that energy from whence we come. And so just to be able to recognize that, to be gentle with ourselves, and just to understand that it doesn't mean that we're alone or that we're not home.
Oh my, you bring up such a good part of this conversation, because Christmas time,
Mm-hmm.
we think of the memories,
Yeah.
right? Especially when we're older, we think of all that's gone before and that was sweet and that, brought us to life and that helped us transform our idea of
Mm-hmm.
who we are and what, how to see the world. We think about past,
Yeah.
right? And so when you think about past, what happens? You're in the present thinking about past, or are you in the past in the present moment?
Mm.
So I think the power of connection really can be found in both.
Mm-hmm.
When you are a part of that past in your memory, but also when you think about not being alone and coming home and being at home with self, that to me has to be done in the present moment. It
Yeah.
has to be present moment awareness and being conscious about all that I am, all that I have, all that is. And
Yeah.
I'm one with all of that here and now, and I'm enough as I am. You
Yes.
can't get that idea from the sweetness of enjoying the memories of the past. That's
Yes.
something else. They're
Yeah.
both important,
Yes.
always, right?
I agree. And I think that once we are able to get to that point, Dr. Nadene, that you're talking about, with being connected and feeling at home within ourselves. I mean, to me, that things that I think about, isn't that the ultimate place we're trying to get to, each and every one of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To feeling that all the time and not just some of the time. Because then we are at home wherever we are, no matter what.
I kind of like, Cheryl, I kind of like most of the time, but not all of the time. I want to mix it up. I want to have the joy of moving back to that which I know is true, and then having the fun and the discovery and the insights that are born by the challenges of moving away from home.
Right.
Yeah. So this and again. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I saw the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barbara.
Go ahead, Nadine. I'll get in a second.
Okay. I was just going to say that I saw the intro the last time I was on your show. That tiger wasn't there. The roar wasn't there. The out of your mouth title wasn't there. And I'm like, what's happening here? So I'm watching this and I'm going raw vulnerability and topics and ways of looking at things that sometimes maybe are not popular, but make you question a little deeper, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to just take that moment and applaud that you're doing this. And so with that, I just wanted to kind of move the conversation towards literal homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And our perception of the homeless.
Oh,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
I've been fortunate enough to have some really good conversations with people that I've met on the street. And when we take the time to look in somebody's eyes and even just share a couple of words, the power in that is really remarkable. And I think it's a great opportunity to shift our perspective from, oh, I'm so sorry, or having sympathy, which I think is not particularly positive, but to have an uplifting conversation with somebody that acknowledges that they are enough, regardless of their current circumstance. I still see them as divine. And I think that is something that, we have to work on. I know I had to work on that, to not let my judgment come in. I don't know why this person's on the street or why they have no home, but what I do know is, sort of that divinity in me and the divinity in them is one. We're connected. I always like to make eye contact. And I remember we were doing an opening ceremony for a building, and we did the song by Karen Drucker and David Alt, I Stand Before You. And it was so powerful to stand in front of somebody and sing, I stand before you knowing we are one. You are the mirror of my soul. And singing that to some of the people were absolutely in tears. Some kind of looked away because it was so intimate. But it really was powerful, and it created an energy that even now when we walk into that space, there's just a love there that is really quite remarkable for any type of, it's a nonprofit, but for any type of business, that is.
And I think we often judge, and especially the homeless, and I have a whole long story about my relationship with homeless people up until probably last year. But the judgment keeps us safe.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It keeps us safe from looking at that within us that is alive but maybe unconscious, that we are seeing in someone else. It's the darkness that makes us afraid, that we don't want to touch over here. And you're right, it's hard to be vulnerable and intimate with that which you do not understand because you're afraid of it.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know about you ladies, I've never been homeless. So I'm talking about as a privileged white person, white woman, I think we all are.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I think, oh, well, we really don't have a right to talk about homelessness, except that how, and how we started the show, because that I think we all have in common, no matter where we live or how much we own. But the idea of seeing, to your point, Barbara, seeing everyone as whole and not enabling and not giving and connecting out of your need to feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the connection is conscious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all give to try to help.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is we're helping. Our helping makes us feel better. Does it really help? Because do we really know?
Yeah.
It's like my mother, she always used to make my clothes. Was an only child. And I moved away at home from maybe 15 years of age. And at 20, I was still receiving homemade Vogue patterns. You know, those shifts. And I'm like, does she even know who I am? You know, we give gifts to people we think they like.
Yeah.
You know,
We do that all the time.
so how do we become more conscious about the power of the connection with the other, which basically is that within ourselves that we are not connected with ultimately?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do we do that? Let's use the homeless for now as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we create a more powerful connection? You said looking in someone's eyes, maybe touching, maybe listening instead of speaking a lot like I'm doing right now.
I met a lovely woman on the Stephen Avenue Mall in Calgary. I was walking with my son, and she was, you know, pushing her buggy of possessions and was asking people for change. And so, you know, I stopped and started chatting with her and, you know, reached in my pocket to give her some money. And she just said, you know, why are you being so nice? And I went, but by the grace of God, I could be you. Circumstances could change. I don't know. We never know what tomorrow brings. And she talked about how people would spit on her and would tell her to go get a job, like just being mean to her. And, you know, I just took the time to chat with her. I always, when I'm giving the gift of money, if I can, I always hold their hand. In my mind, I'm not so much giving money, I'm giving love. I want that energy of love. And for love, what I mean by that is oneness. You know, see myself in this individual. And so that's been a practice of mine for quite a while. And sometimes when I'm out and about, because we do have a huge problem here in Toronto of so many people who are without housing. And here, I always listen to my intuition, because not everybody is going to be safe or kind. And so listening to my intuition in how we connect always makes a big difference for me as well. It's like somehow I know that I want to have a conversation with this person, but I always say something and I always look in their eyes. I always want to just connect. And I think when I first started doing it was really about healing a part of myself. And that was in Calgary. And I just had this intuition to give. And as I was doing as I was walking, I took the bus downtown and I was getting off and I'd taken some change out because I thought there's somebody who's going to need it. And there was a man who was walking up the street. He was obviously intoxicated. And I had been married to an alcoholic. So I had a big fear of anyone who was drinking a lot. And so I'm walking along and I could see this person ahead of me and people are really avoiding him. And when he came to me, I took his hand and I put the money in, and it was the first time I'd ever done something like this. And I made him look up and I said, "Have a most beautiful day." And I walked away. And that was a healing moment for me. I don't know what it did for him, but it was a healing moment for me that has allowed me to not be judgmental of people who are homeless. I have other judgments, but not of that. And not a sympathy, but rather knowing too that we all have choice. And the choice is to give when I can or how I can. But part of my giving is to give with a a connecting sense of, but by the grace of God, I could be you. And so I want to honor who you are. And, who knows what that does for another person, but I want to see them. And hopefully they see something in themselves from that.
Can I, if I might, I wanted to just jump on that statement there for the grace of God. Why? I had alcoholic parents, and I became a very functional workaholic alcoholic.
Yeah.
And when I was 33 in Calgary, it all happens in Calgary, Barbara. I was at the height of my dysfunction. I was breaking down to the point where I could not hide it anymore. Right? Side note, the homeless don't hide it.
No.
Their mess is out there.
Yeah.
Our mess, we hide quite well.
Yes.
Right? For the most part, we protect it so people don't see it. Think about those people. During the time they were homeless, everything is out for everyone to see.
Yeah.
In a world where we do anything to try to be seen and heard for who we are, and then we do everything to not be seen for who we are because we think we'll be rejected.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a real paradox. So here I am, the night of what I call my breakdown breakthrough. I'm not going to tell you the backstory. I'll just tell you the important part. I'm walking on the street, no shoes, winter. My pockets are full of money from a restaurant that I was running. I just had a big blow up in my friend's apartment. So I'm out of there and I'm drunk. I'm walking on the street and there's a man going like this, walking on the other side of the street, right? And he goes, "Hey lady, can I help you?" And I'm like looking at him like, are you kidding me? I am me and you are you. Have you seen you? Have you seen me? That in my drunk, no, we were both drunk, okay? I failed to think about that in the moment, but I still had that arrogance and that entitlement. And so what happened was, long story short, I passed out. So I said to him, no, or, something like that. I passed out. I woke up and my head was in his lap. He was stroking my hair. And I looked up into his eyes. And I said, Barbara, there go I. Not there, but for the grace of God. There go I. Yeah. I saw in that moment that I was no different. Exactly. That was a hugely transformative moment. And I took myself into the YWCA and I lived in a room for 9 months and ate out of vending machines. And then my clown, lovable Louie, the hobo clown, was born.
Oh, I love Louie.
So I ended up becoming that man for 23 years.
Wow.
And I worked through the part of me that was separate. And I mean, I just started working through it. I don't mean to say I've done it. I'm done. Oh, look at you. Aren't you smart? Look at that. And it was profound. And yet, Barbara, and yet, let me tell you, to be honest, my confession is I still, on my bucket list, this is it. I want to be able to walk down Leon Avenue in Kelowna and be able to take someone's hand and look in their eyes and not be afraid. I am still afraid.
Wow.
And I'm like, how is that possible?
How is that possible?
What am I afraid of after all these years of doing this deep work and the shadow work and the clown, the teaching it? And I'm like, what's up with that?
Yeah, that's remarkable. That is remarkable. But we do have our fears. And I think we need to acknowledge those as well and use them as an avenue to go inward, to begin to continue, because we're on this path. We're still continuing to unpeel all layers of our identity because we haven't touched it yet. You know, we have moments of profound awareness, and then Okay, well, we're going to come back. We're at the halfway point. We're going to take a commercial break. We have so much more to talk about. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a moment with Out of My Mouth on the New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we're back. Talking about the homeless and how we can sometimes feel very separate. There's a lot of other things that cause us to feel separate, like a woman wearing hijab. As a person who doesn't wear one, would I be comfortable going up and saying, hey, how are you, having a conversation? Or language barriers. We talked a little bit about that when we don't know the language. And I think there's a number of other things. The color of our skin, we might feel like, oh, I don't know if I can connect with this person because somehow they're different. And I think that's what creates a lot of the ideas of division and separation, is that we're not allowing ourselves to see past these illusions of walls, putting them in our own mind, and then standing with them. And my daughter was telling me about being at a park with her grandson, and another woman was there with her children. And so she sat down beside her and started having a conversation with her. And the woman drove her back to our house. But what was interesting was the woman said to her, I'm so happy somebody would talk to me, because she was in the hijab, and most people will, unless, they're dressed the same way, have the same religion or upbringing or culture, they won't talk to her at all. So she found it really enriching that the young Canadian woman would actually sit down and just create a conversation. So there's perceived walls that we could break down within ourselves by stretching a little bit. But it comes back to what you said at the beginning, Nadene. The connection has to start here. We have to know we're enough before we can really put ourselves out in a new way, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important as well to be curious in a loving, respectful way, right? Because there's often things that we don't know about with different cultures, different religions that stop us from communicating. And maybe if we were just curious in a respectful way, people might not be offended, right? So I'm trying to think of an example, but I know, for example, in some African cultures, looking someone in the eye is hugely disrespectful, right? So we may think, oh, that's a good thing to do. And then we may come across somebody who really feels disrespected and uncomfortable because we've looked them in the eye. So just being curious a little bit about who are they and, you know, where they're from. And then as I say that, I also recognize that we also, because of the color of somebody's skin or because of what they look like, we assume, or we can assume, they're from somewhere else and they were actually born here.
Exactly.
You know, so there's this whole oh my gosh, you know, I think like dichotomy, Dr. Nadene, you used that word. And so it's really just about, I think, being authentic, being respectful, and being willing to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And, you know, in the spiritual teachings, the principle is you know, there is no other, right? And you've said that a number of times, Barbara, about one. We're one, we're one. There is no other. So how we see ourselves is how we see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
that's scary.
Well, all right, time for confession. But, you know, so the work is always here. And, and you know, Dr. Ernest Holmes, who created the science mind, and spirit, would always remind us that we cannot change what happens in the level of condition on that level. We have to go back to what caused our participation, or the way our participation is our perception.
Yeah.
Because that's a very busy thing. That's action, because everything's energy. So if we perceive something, we are actively energizing our communication and our thoughts to another person just through our perception.
Yeah.
So that's where the work is.
Yeah. It's all inner.
Yeah. It's, you know, we tend to identify ourselves based on, you know, our experiences and our feelings and our thoughts, when we are not our thoughts, we're not our body, we're not our words, we are so much more
than that. Exactly.
And winter time and Christmas, and when our emotions are rife, everyone's emotions are up. Right? And the cold, it is a time to turn in. It is a beautiful seasonal opportunity to ask some deeper questions. And just listen for the answer. Don't push, don't force, don't threaten, don't barter, just listen and know that in the right and perfect time they will emerge in a manner in which you will be able to hear them and accept them for yourself.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I've found in the work that I do with so many different cultures is I read voraciously. Books, you know, based on, you know, the Indigenous experience, reading and educating myself so that I can begin to have an understanding of something else. I've read a number of books around, you know, the slavery that happened in both Canada and the US. And looking at things from that perspective allows me to get a deeper understanding, to have an idea of, you know, a very simple, basic idea of Buddhism what is acceptable and what is not. And then learning how to allow myself to be me and to meet other people and greet other people in a way that they feel the love that I have within. And I can only do that if I've centered myself within myself and feel good about where I am in that moment. That's the only time I can truly give that loving energy. And what I've noticed is it's always received joyfully.
Yes. And it's always understood and recognized. There is no question or doubt, is there?
None.
No.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. And can I do it 100% of the time? No.
No.
Good. I have my where I'm under. Yeah. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I hear you, Barbara Jean. And then I go to also, I keep thinking about how at times I've made assumptions about people. And done certain things. So, for example, I walk into a shop and I see a homeless person sitting outside, and I'm thinking, what can I do for this person? It's a hot day. Let me at least buy them a 6-pack of water or something, right? And then I come out and I go past, and this really happened. And I offered him the water. I said, would you like this water? And he said, no, thank you. And so I have to respect that, right? And I have to make no judgment about that, be okay with that.
Absolutely.
Right? And I've done that before with food, with muffins, or, with whatever. And I remember doing that in Toronto one time. And the guy looked at me and he said, thank you so much. He said, I don't eat those, but I think, I can give this kind of thing. Yeah. Right? So I always think about those situations and the assumptions that we make. And also, I do believe that with mental health issues and things like that, which is so unfortunate that people like that are on the streets. I mean, it's unfortunate that anybody's on the street. But when it comes to mental health and people ending up in jail and all those kinds of things, and people being so unkind because of the response they receive from an individual, to me, that's also where the work needs to be done, is to recognize that this is not personal, right? And to be able to look at them and like you say, we are one, and look at, I often walk around and say, I am you, I am that, right? I think the Moses Code was about, instead of saying I am that I am that I am, right? And so recognizing that as well, and just being able to not react.
Exactly.
Right? But really to just be present.
Another dichotomy, though, in what you said, Cheryl, very beautifully spoken, is that it's never about us, but it's always about us.
Yeah.
Right? So don't take everything personally, but look inside to see what within you participated in causing this experience, because it takes two.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do a little bit different is I never assume what they need. I'm going into a store, I'll sit back and say, I don't have any cash, but can I get something for you? And they'll tell me, oh, I'd love some food, or I'd love some water, I'd love a soda, whatever. And then that's what I bring out. I make sure that I ask that question, because again, you get caught with the assumption that, it could be somebody who's not homeless, who's just, got off work and they're a little grubby and they're sitting outside resting for a few minutes before they head off wherever. So, we have to really look at our assumptions as well, which come from us. Yeah.
Go, Dr. Nadene.
Thank you. I'll never shut up. You got to just cut me off. We're such a self-help generation, and the self-help thing where everyone's made billions of dollars and brought us to the place of dependency rather than self-reliance, right? We have to, the spiritual path is one that completely pulls away from that.
Yes.
And so we become self-reliant, self-responsible, and free because of it, not chained because we're responsible.
Mm. Mm.
But what I wanted to say was the self-help generation keeps perpetuating this idea that something is wrong, something needs to be fixed about me, or something. I mean, we've talked about the word healing. You know, I like, in our language, we talk about wholing. Recognizing the wholeness is already there so that we can become an expression and therefore experience the wholeness. We can become the presence. We can become the light of spirit. We can become the love of spirit because we are that.
That's what
We are that I am. But so everything else around us is about self-improvement, self-betterment, instead of self-approving.
love that.
And then once you self-approve, because you never stop, it never stops. Where do you go from there? You go to validating oneself by the truth of who you are, by what you feel, by knowing what you need, by taking responsibility for that, by not making assumptions, but asking, but listening, all these wonderful practices that take time. And then you self-accept, where you don't need someone else's validation or approval. And then from that place, you go into surrendering that self you have accepted. You surrender it up and over because you know there's something greater going on always. And then what do you have? I found I touch in those moments to being open to receive life as it is. Receive it and glorify it for what it is, rather than being in my small ego mind trying to understand or change how it is. I don't need to do that. Everything is right and perfect the way it is. What is left to do?
Wow.
Once I've surrendered the ego's need, the ego is very important. It's easing God on board, not easing God out. You know, it's like, it's a good part, but you're not to be driven by it, of course. But once you're able to receive life, then you become more easily empty-minded, meaning you can move into the silence and allow and listen. You don't have to make up what you need. You can just listen and be in the present moment. And you can be more fulfilled in your soul. So for me, empty mind, open mind. Empty mind, receptive mind. And soul filled rather than busy mind. And soul empty, right?
I love that.
I'm finished. Okay.
No, I love that. I love that example. Just the way you put that was so easy to understand, and just so beautiful to, even for me to imagine, right? So yeah, and I kept thinking about that, you know, busy minds, we get in the way of ourselves when we are so busy minded. You know, so it's like, okay, so let's get out of the way of ourselves and you know, just be and have that space to allow us to be in the present moment and not always somewhere else.
It is a journey.
It's almost like we don't know who we are if we're not busy. If we don't have an outer connection or reason or purpose or understanding, then we are nothing.
It's so true.
Like it ceases to exist, and it's so uncomfortable that I end up doing life by trying to get in the milieu of how this situation is being handled, how the voters went in the last election of the US, how this person is feeling, or how to make them feel better, or how I perceive this, or what I can do to change that, instead of just going, I see God. I honor what is, because it's all that is.
Exactly.
If you want to change something, you're separating from the divine truth of what is.
Oh my gosh, love it. And in fact, Barbara and I are both reading a book at the moment, working on Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's loving what is and recognizing that it is all exactly the way it's meant to be.
So unless you create that beautiful sacred relationship with yourself, and understand that divinity and humanity are not two things, and take the time during this season, and in the darkness and the coldness, when you want to cut off and naturally want to do this.
It's true.
Naturally. Take the time. And if you don't do it this year, it'll come back around next year.
Absolutely.
You'll always have an opportunity, right? To work on that relationship so that you can be the presence rather than try so hard to find it.
Yeah. And be okay with it, right? Be okay with yourself, because I think about those things, and I'm always like, when we talk about people who don't have homes, and I'm looking outside and it was just snowing a moment ago, I'm just feeling so sad for them, and feeling, like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that I'm not out there. They must be so cold, and, and all that kind of thing, which takes me away from really that presence within me, because I'm feeling so, I suppose, worried, concerned. I don't know what it is. And for me, it's, where can I make change, right? And the only change that we can make is on ourselves. And the more we do in changing ourselves, I think the more it impacts our environment, the space around us, the community around us. And so because we are one, it's all connected, which is, I know there's other ways to give back, kind of things, but recognizing that guilt and shame and all those things don't serve me either.
They don't serve.
And that, by its very nature, the universe is not only friendly, but it's abundant. And how does that show up in your life? And when we can see the truth of us and our enoughness, we can look out and know, the power of the mind, the energy of our thought, of our prayer.
Exactly.
We all know is tantamount to creating the change, and where miracles, so-called miracles, will happen. We call them ordinaries, right? But because it's just the law of cause and effect in action, right? It's just that which is unseen becoming visible by means of the power of our intention and direction.
Exactly. And if we were all just a little kinder, even, or just a little, of those kinds of things, what a better world this would be, and how much more connected would we feel.
I don't know time-wise, but I have another quick little story to share. Can I do that? I was in Yelapa in Mexico, staying in Puerto Vallarta. We took this little motorboat to Yelapa, and it was about 25 years ago. My friend and I, her name is Tracy, we had a lovely day on the beach. It was quite a remote beach, where the ladies with the pies, the homemade fresh coconut cream and the lemon meringue came. And, in those days you could be in your bikini and eat 3 slices and you never saw any difference, right? So anyway, the night was falling. We get back in the little open motorboat to go back to Puerto Vallarta. It's about an hour's boat ride. And coming up are a couple of the island native young boys and a couple of men carrying this screaming man towards us. And he was, unshaven, long hair, hardly clothed, obviously not in his right mind. 25 years ago. And I'm in the boat going, please go faster. Please go faster. I don't want, he's heading for the boat. I don't want him in the boat, right? There's only one seat available in front of me. Well, sure enough, they get him on the boat. I am mortified and completely scared, and I've answered my own question. I'm afraid of being hit. I'm afraid of being hit. And by someone mentally unstable. So he's sitting there and he's screaming, yelling, and I'm like this. And my friend, I've got her by the back, and she's moving forward toward him, and I'm trying to pull her back, right? And she leans in and she looks at him, Barbara, just like you were saying. And she looks at him in his eyes, and she followed them because he was all over the place, right? And she said, "What do you need? What can I do? What do you need? I love you." And his whole demeanor just came in. It became peaceful. And she held his hands and looked into his eyes. And I thought, what an incredible act.
Yeah.
It wasn't an act of kindness. It was a genuine connection to that within her that was alive within him, no matter what the appearance,
Exactly.
the perception. And boom, it was done. So can we approach ourselves like that?
Yeah.
Can we judge ourselves? Can we approach our family members, our politicians, the people on the street, anybody that starts to make us feel uncomfortable for whatever reason?
Yeah. I love that.
Come from that place.
It's beautiful. We're down to our last 3.5 minutes, believe it or not. It goes really quickly. Final thoughts. Anything that you think would be great for people to take away from this conversation? Nadene, what would be one thing?
Can I go last?
Sure. Cheryl could go first, yeah.
Well, just that one question, what do you need, is so appropriate in so many different situations. That was just so powerful. So I really appreciate that story, Nadene, and I'm hopefully gonna remember that and take that with me wherever I go.
And you can rewatch the show to get that too.
Yes, too. Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, it's really about connecting, and that all of us are valuable. We may not understand each other in the moment, but given that what you just shared, Nadene, that's all we have to remember, is that when we connect from that heart space where we know it's profound. It is profound. So connect with people. They're kind of.
Mine would be, what is it? What is mine to do? First in here with me in the state of connection, and then allow however I feel from that place to move forward.
That's beautiful.
What is mine to do? And Neil Donald Walsh, to bring it back to him, said, what would love do now?
Yes.
And I always used to think that meant my actions should be more loving. But then I realized it meant, how can I love myself in a manner where I don't project something that is not true?
Beautiful.
Gorgeous. And we were going to end today with a little bit of music.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, all.
And
thank you, Nadene.
So wonderful having you here. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And this is the New Thought Media Network, out of my mouth. And consider sending a donation for the end of the year. You get tax receipts, so a little something you can offer to help to create the programming on this channel. Happy holidays. We'll see you in the new year, but we do have reruns coming, so stay tuned. Mwah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.